Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we say goodbye to an old friend. I'm pleased to announce the release of my Capture One and Lightroom presets, Metamorphic Portraits, The Sound of Silver, and Rangefinder. These are all available for purchase at my website. Go to kevindealphotography.com or check out a link in the description below. And now, on to today's episode. If you hear my opinions throughout this episode and you like what I have to say about the R7, I did do a 3-part review, and all 3 parts equal out to about an hour, so you can really get in depth if you want to learn more about this camera. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. So the Canon EOS R7 was the first flagship APS-C sensor camera for the Canon R system. It had some really cool features that you'd never seen inside of a mirrorless Canon camera before that was an APS-C, like IBIS, its buffer, its frames per second, and dual card slots. So it's definitely a cool camera. It's their flagship APS-C camera. Still, 2 years later, they haven't come out with one that's better, so they're probably going to come out with a Mark II soon, I'm guessing. But even 2 years after its release, outside of the Fuji X-H2 and a couple other cameras, there's really not a lot of competition for it in terms of quality and features in the APS-C world. And when it came out, it actually had better autofocus than my original R5. And I was faced with a dilemma because the reason I bought this R7 was to have it be a backup to my R5, which I was mainly using for weddings, and having a second camera with dual card slots seemed like a really good idea at the time. And you have to go back to 2022 because when this camera launched, it was $1,000 less than the R6. The R7 has been a fantastic camera for me, but my needs have changed over time as Canon has been coming out with new cameras. So I decided that I wanted to get another full frame camera to back up my R5, and then I decided to make this R7 perform the duties that you're seeing right now, which is record me for this channel. And so the R8 was the backup to my R5, but now that they have an R5 Mark II, which I got right here, and it is a fantastic camera, a beautiful high megapixel flagship camera for them, it kind of is leaving this R7 in a place where I don't really know what to do with it, because I've got the R5 Mark II as the primary, the R5 as the backup, and I can also use it for my video camera out in the field to shoot my B-roll and all that. I've got the R8, which is recording me right now, and then I have a little R50 that I just kind of use to film little B-roll things around my studio. And so I don't think I really need a dual card slot IBIS type of camera anymore. And the fact that it's APS-C, I'm kind of switching all my cameras over to full frame. So when it came out, obviously there was just this and the R6, and the R6 was $1,000 more, and I didn't want to spend so much on that backup camera. So this camera is kind of now in no man's land, so to speak. I don't really have a use for it anymore. So I am selling my R7. I am parting ways with it, but I want to take a trip down memory lane because in 2024, despite the fact that they're probably going to come out with a second version of this in the not too distant future, and that's not a rumor, it's just common sense. This is starting to become long in the tooth in the camera world. It's still a great camera. You still have a 32 megapixel sensor. It's super fast, and it's just really easy to use, and I think it's an excellent camera, obviously, if you're a wildlife photographer And I just want to talk about some things that I love about this camera before I let it go. So maybe you're watching this and you're maybe considering getting the original R7. If you're not into the big digital menus, you just have the regular PASM dial on it, which I actually think is kind of cool. To further expand upon that, I like having the PASM dial because I can just quickly get between my modes. I don't have to hit a bunch of extra buttons like I did on my original R5. And then another really cool thing about the R7 is its startup time is almost instantaneous, so you can get to action right away. Another cool feature of this camera is it can do 4K 60 frames per second, and in 114-degree heat in Las Vegas, I was able to get over 30 minutes before it started to overheat. So this camera definitely can stand up to the elements in terms of video. Additionally, like its more expensive counterparts, the R5 and the R6 models, it has robust construction, it has weather sealing, and then it has that really cool feature when you turn the camera off, it actually puts a protective window in front of the sensor. Another area where it shares professional features with its R6, R5, and R3 siblings is that you can customize this camera to your heart's content. You can customize the buttons, you can customize the dials, and you're getting those exact same features you get out of the more expensive models. Speaking of the sensor, I actually liked the sensor overall in light where you didn't have to get above 1600. I feel like above 1600 is when that sensor started to kind of fall apart, but as you can see right here, it did a fantastic job on landscapes. I took it out to the Grand Canyon, I took it all over the American Southwest, and it did admirable work there, and it even did a pretty good job of street photography, as you can see right here in Las Vegas. I think it did great. It paired up well with a lot of the RF lenses, so definitely something to consider if you want a good all-arounder. I also felt like this was the first Canon R series camera that really had serious tracking built into it, R3 aside. And as you can see from these examples that I show you right here, whether you're shooting sports or wildlife or portraits, it was the first model of Canon R series cameras where I really felt like the autofocus was sticky. Now, they've taken that and they've expanded upon it further, and now the R5, R6 Mark II models are definitely better, but this was the very first model of Canon R series camera I ever used where I thought that the autofocus was really pushing up to another tier. So if you're on the fence about getting this, it's still relevant autofocus in the year 2024. I would say the most disappointing thing that Canon did with all their other models, I really love this thumbstick. I know that the old guard of 5D users really love the thumb dial on the back, but I'm up here with my exposure triangle, so if I have a joystick and right where my joystick is, I can have this. I personally think this is way cooler, and this is probably the feature I'm going to miss the most on this camera, and I'm actually a little disappointed that Canon just abandoned it after one try, when having all this stuff up right here is absolutely awesome to have. You know, if you're a bird photographer, your sports photographer, you don't have to move your hands that much. And so I don't know why Canon decided to do that. Kind of weird. But I personally think that's one of the coolest parts about this camera. And it's going to be the thing I miss the most. It's an absolute gem. And for those of you who are going to continue to have your R7s, I'm jealous that you still have this and I'm getting rid of it. So I like the fact that it had IBIS. What a cool feature. I actually filmed some anamorphic stuff on this camera because it's already in a crop mode. And so it's really close to Super 35. And I got some really good footage with this guy. So it served me well as a video camera. I don't shoot a lot of wildlife. I mainly shot wildlife for the review of this, but I used it at a wedding and it did a fantastic job there. I put my really nice RF glass on it, and man, the images were just insanely beautiful, super fantastic. So just if you're on the fence about this camera and you're not sure, I mean, they're probably going to come out with a newer version of it soon, but it's still a relevant camera in 2024. It's given me a lot of beautiful memories. And so I hate to say goodbye. I hate to pour one out, but I just can't justify keeping this camera anymore. So let's give this guy a proper farewell and let's send him off, and let's pour one out. That does it for today's episode. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching today. Are you going to keep your R7 for the foreseeable future? Are you anticipating a new version of it? What do you like about your R7? What do you not like about your R7? Tell me about it in the comments below. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye. All right, I sold my R7 and I have cash, and since I never have cash on me, I might as well do my best impersonation of Floyd Money Mayweather. This is harder than it looks, man. Off to the bank.